The subject that we're going to speak of today is a part of our Spirit Life series of talks, and this one is called the sleep state. On Earth, not very much is known about the sleep state. And in fact, almost all people, including those people who are spiritualists of some kind, in the New Age movement or otherwise, there is not really much knowledge even amongst those kind of people about what actually occurs when you're asleep. And in this discussion, we are not talking about the dream state. We are talking about the rest of the time in your sleep state, because they are two separate things. So firstly, what we want to do is clarify to you what the sleep state is and how it begins and ends, and also clarify to you a little bit about the dream state and what that is in between, so that you get a bit of a picture between the two. But then we want to talk about your sleep state. And the reason why we want to talk about it is, if you think about it, you have 24 hours in the day. And how much of those hours, or how many of those hours, do you sleep? 5, 10. Well, let's go 5 to 10, shall we, on the average? The average person is close to 8 hours in terms of that time. So basically we're looking at a third of your entire life that is spent sleeping. And the interesting thing is, you're not actually sleeping. That's the interesting thing. We want to describe what's going on when you're asleep. But there's a big portion of your life that you're not sleeping, that you actually spend in the spirit world, connected to your spirit body, and there is just a cord, a silver cord, that connects you back to your material body. So let's describe what happens with sleep. So here's your physical body, here's your spirit body, and here's your half of the soul. Spirit body, physical body. Now, when you're asleep, generally, but not always, your physical body goes horizontal. And for some reason, I've got this problem where if my physical body is kept vertical, I stay awake, no matter what happens, and no matter how tired I am. And I've actually stayed awake at some points in my life for 5 days straight. If as long as I stay vertical, I'll stay awake. But as soon as I lay down for myself, I'm generally out pretty much instantly, or very close to instantly, within a few seconds, generally. Now, for most people, a lot of people can sleep while they're sitting up and things like that, and I feel jealous of you if that's the case, if you can do that. But it's still the same principle as to what actually occurs, whether you're laying down, sitting up. It's just when you go to sleep, this is what occurs. So when you go to sleep, your physical body is generally laying down, and the spirit body, as you go to sleep, leaves the connection. Normally they're over the top of each other, like one over the top of the other, but as you go to sleep, there's a connection. Actually, probably should draw it a different colour just so you get the picture. There's a connection that happens, and your spirit body leaves your material body, but remains connected to it via a cord which is called your silver cord. And remember, your silver cord is like, you could think of it like a wiring harness that connects the physical body robot to the spirit body and therefore to the soul, because the spirit body is actually connected to the soul. Does that make sense? So the soul still is capable of receiving input from the physical body, and this is why you might wake up in the middle of the night having to go to the toilet, because the soul is still capable of knowing what's going on with the physical body and the physical body's needs. But the primary area where it receives data from, if you could think of it like that, is now the spirit body, the spirit body's robot, if you like, and the soul being the container, which is yourself, and these two bodies being just the spiritual and physical ways for the soul to collect data, to collect information, to have its life experience. So once the spirit body steps out of the physical body, which happens when you go to sleep, the spirit body becomes the main centre through which experiential input is received by the soul. Does that make sense to everyone so far? Because that is the case, now the spirit body is capable of having experiences while you're asleep. And when I say capable, for all of us, it happens automatically. You all have experiences, and many experiences, while you're asleep. Now, the spirit body and where it can go in the spirit world is dependent upon the soul's condition. So if the soul is full of lots of very dark emotions and still has a lot of unhealed things to work its way through emotionally in regard to love, then the spirit body can only frequent the first sphere and usually the lower regions of the first sphere. So in other words, can only frequent the hells. But if the soul condition has started to grow in love and actually has got to the point where fear is not dominant anymore in the soul and things like that, then there's a potential, and you've dealt with different moral issues, there's a potential of you being in the second sphere. And so the soul and the spirit body would frequent the second sphere, if that is the case. Now, for the majority of people on earth, that is not the case. For the majority of people on earth, we frequent the first sphere of the spirit world, mostly. Now, in the first sphere, we have literally thousands of planes, if you like, which go right down into the depths of darkness that are sort of so black that you can't see yourself even. In fact, you can only have your sensory apparatus by feelings because you can't actually see anybody in the darkest of the locations in the hells. But right up to the top of the first sphere, which is Summerland, you can have an experience that's very, very similar to Earth. And the different things that you experience on Earth, very, very similar to the things you might experience at Summerland at some point. That's the first sphere where most of us frequent in our sleep state. So, we lay down, we go to sleep, our spirit body raises out of our physical body, and sometimes some of you experience that sensation of it happening before it actually happens, and you come back to your physical body. You've ever had that feeling? Where you're going to sleep and you go, oh, you know, like in shock almost, where you're going to sleep and then you come back very rapidly. Well, that was your spirit body leaving and then coming back very rapidly into your body, right? And there are reasons why that happens, and we'll talk about some of those reasons. But most of the time when we go to sleep, that generally does not happen. We go to sleep and there's this seamless raising, if you like, of the spirit body out of the physical body. And we now are attracted instantly to wherever our soul condition is attracted in the sleep state, in the spirit world. So, if I go to sleep and I've got lots of fear in me, I'm going to be attracted into a situation in the spirit world that is going to trigger that fear as soon as I go to sleep. Can you see why some of you don't want to go to sleep? If I've got a soul that's full of anger and rage in my normal state, but I don't admit to myself that I've got that, then I'll be attracted to a place in the spirit world where that anger and rage gets acted out. If I've got a soul that's been suppressed sexually in some way and has different emotions of powerlessness sexually or powerfulness, a desire for powerfulness sexually, then I'll be attracted to places in the spirit world where I can play that out. Right? All in the first sphere. So these are all going to be in the hells somewhere in the first sphere. Can you see why many of us don't want to remember our sleep state? Because most of us don't want to remember what we're doing in it, to be frank. If we start down here with Barb with some questions. And then up to Alex up the back there.
AJ, yesterday when you mentioned what you were going to talk about today, because I don't ever have any memories of my sleep state.
Yep.
Obviously at a soul level, I went into fear and got very emotional and started crying, but I have no knowledge of my sleep state.
Yep.
So obviously there was...
So the question then becomes, why are you so emotional about it?
Yes.
Doesn't it? And we'll answer some of those questions today, in the discussion today. Alex?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Why is it... I just wanted to say about yesterday, just thank you so much. Hey, you're just an absolute inspiration and you walk the walk, hey. You don't just talk about some stuff and do something else. You're like this ship that just steadfast, just keeps going, Alex. And I just love you heaps. And
thanks.
Just, just about the sleep state.
Yep.
Is it... I feel like it depends where I go, depending on the emotions that I'm in at the time.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's very dependent upon a lot of things, which we'll go through in a minute. And it's very much related to yesterday's discussion, actually. Okay. Because you remember yesterday, near the end of the day, we listed all of the core emotions that, or core, you could call them core fundamental characteristics or traits that we really need to get through our facade. Remember, we mentioned trust in God, faith in God, having personal integrity, courage, those kind of qualities. Well, these kind of qualities are also essential for you to actually develop in your sleep state. So without those qualities, and this is why I've put the two discussions together, because I feel that what we learned yesterday is very much related to what we do in our sleep state. What we do in our facade on earth and what we do in our sleep state are very different to each other because of the facade that we live on earth. And we need to understand the relationship between our sleep state, what we're doing there, and why different things happen in our sleep state each night. And we want to, in the end, become fully conscious of everything we're doing. So, in other words, we can get to the point where you remember your entire sleep state, from the moment of leaving your body to the moment of coming back to it. And you remember everything that you did. Now, that would be pretty handy, don't you think? You'd be handy in a lot of areas, as you're going to find out today. So what we want to do is have a bit more openness to the understanding of what goes on when we're asleep. Yep.